go back based upon some additional information provided to us by the retirement fund on the annuities for the retired judges and the Magalahi and Segundo Magalahi in Guahan, that they wanted us to make adjustments based upon events that have transpired after the submission of this budget. And that is the subject of an amendment proposed by Senator Respicia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have this amendment, and I don't know if we can pull it up on the projector so we don't have to make copies or have to wait for the copies. But basically what you said, and this information is provided to us from the retirement fund, and since it's their numbers, I moved this as a matter of procedure to make sure that those numbers are reflective of what the retirement fund submitted to you and to Office of Finance and Budget. So I make this motion at this time, this amendment. That's correct. That's the correct one.
Okay. So it's an adjustment to the total amount, and it changes the amount available for the governor's pension from 242,845 to 251,000 at the request of the retirement fund, and then the same with regards to the retired justice and justices. The amount changes from 487,150 to 358,000. No objections? The amendment carries. Okay. We were on the appropriation to the cost of living. I think we did that. That's $1,100 per retiree. Appropriations to the Department of Education for the GPA promissory note. DOE entered into a promissory note for some back due GPA bills, and the appropriation to support that payment is $1,432,753, and this is the appropriation that will be provided to the Department of Education over and above their budget, so it doesn't come out of their operational budget. The next miscellaneous appropriation is the appropriation for the Guam Regional Transit Authority. The amount provided is $3,905,899. This is derived from a formula based upon the collections in the Territorial Highway Fund. $349,000 will be from the Public Transit Fund, and $3,556,689 is from the Guam Highway Fund for that total of $3.9 million plus. The Guam Election Commission will receive an appropriation of $756,027 for fiscal year 2013. The Guam Solid Waste Authority appropriation. This is an appropriation for the debt service of the bond for the construction of the Ordot landfill, and from fiscal year 2013, $7,759,106 is appropriated from the Solid Waste Operations Fund to the Solid Waste Authority pursuant to Public Law 31-20. The Guam Farmers Cooperative Association, Guam Inc. This is an appropriation that's being given in the amount of $200,000 to the is appropriated from the general fund to the University of Guam for the purpose of assisting the Guam Farmers Cooperative Association Inc. To progress their action plan as submitted to his Legislature in Guahan for a farmer-driven initiative for food import substitution to promote local jobs and food security for the people of Guam, and the development of a business plan for the operation of a farmers cooperative facilities to be constructed in Dedido, funded by the Tourist Attraction Fund proceeds. This is one of the initiatives from the Hot Buns, and what we wanted to do was work with the Guam Farmers Co-op and UOG to assist them in planning for that construction, because it's funded now, so we anticipate the construction will occur. The Guam Football Soccer Association, this is an appropriation of $500,000 as a matching grant. For every dollar they get, they have to provide an additional dollar for the purpose of expanding the northern soccer field. In addition, this also allows them to use the earlier authorized tax credits and or matching funds for the construction of a southern football, quote unquote, soccer field in the southern part of the island. So this will generate some additional economic activity since they have to provide $500,000 in matching funds. The next chapter is the miscellaneous provisions. Deficit reduction. These are basically carry forward miscellaneous provisions from previous budgets. Prior year obligations shall be reported to the governor and the legislature and the Office of Finance and Budget. And if the governor declares that a non-payment of prior year obligations will disrupt essential services to a department or agency, he may utilize FY2013 appropriations for the agency, provided BBMR imposes a corresponding reserve and reduces the department's current budget. To make sure that we don't just pay everything and impact this year, we want to make sure that they make that offsetting. Retirement options for GovGuam employees. This provides that if a department of agency is behind in its retirement fund contribution and an employee wants to retire, they have to make that employee's account whole, which then allows that employee to retire, and we don't hold everybody hostage in that department or agency. The volunteer and donations for Skinner Plaza, again, a continuing provision from previous budgets, allows the legislature to receive donations for Skinner's Plaza, which is under the jurisdiction of the legislature. Section 4 is temporary employment of retired corrections officer. This sets up the mechanism for allowing retired officers to come back in and fill critical vacancies in that department. For those that are deployed or those that are on long-term disability, they can backfill that position with retired officers. The same is provided for the Guam police officers, for GPD, for the Guam Fire Department, for retired firefighters can come back under those situations. Section 7 also extends that same hiring authority to the Customs and Quarantine Department or department, and then the Department of Revenue and Taxation may also do the same to fill for critical vacancies in that area. The Government of Guam Health Insurance Enrollment Program for Employment pursuant to Public 3101, that when these retired individuals come back, they are required to enroll in the Guam Health Insurance Program as an active employee. The Government of Guam saves money by having these employees who come back after retirement as active versus retired employees, so it allows them a little bit of savings there. The locum tenens exception during the absence of the chief medical examiner, since he's under contract and his contract allows him to perform work in other jurisdictions. When he's absent here, he can appoint a temporary person to fill his position. Advanced payment for medical services. Again, this is a continuing provision from previous budgets. This just says that for MIP, who we refer off-island, that they're allowed to arrange for advanced payment of those services so that individuals can receive care because some of these off-island vendors for medical services for our MIP patients will not bill us at a later date. So we don't want to hold back MIP patients. We allow them to prepay for those services. Section 12 is an administrative provision under the miscellaneous provisions, once again, for transfer of employees. I'm sorry, Senator Muñoz-Barnes. Yeah, the transfer of employees. This restricts transfers of employees between branches of government, and that if an employee is transferred by the administration from one place to another, they keep their pay and salary, and that no employee may be transferred who has a grievance for discrimination based on political affiliation, gender, or sexual harassment, and then unless the employee consents to the said transfer. So it protects employees who may be whistleblowers. And then the other provisions are um, that nothing, notwithstanding any other provision or law or regulation, no employee of an autonomous agency may be transferred to a line department. And the Magalayan Guahan shall transfer the funding so that the funding follows the employee. So these and other sections are the restrictions placed upon transfer of employees. Senator Munya Barnes?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Speaker, I just want to note that on Section 1 of this sub-item 1 of Section 12 includes that this section shall not apply to any employee of the legislative or judicial branches of government. And I just want to say that the mayor's council, the mayor's office are all unclassified employees, and this, if it'll affect the authorization of the governor taking or putting into the mayor's council. I'd like to see if I could add the mayor's offices as a part of this exemption that it shall not apply to, because all the mayor's employees are usually at will of the mayor.
Okay. So the amendment
I guess would be or judicial branches of government, or the mayors, or within the
employment of the mayor's offices?
offices.
Okay. So the amendment that Senator Barnes is offering is on subsection 1 of Section 12, page 155, where it says, this section shall not apply to any employee of the legislative, would be, make that a comma, strike out the word or, judicial branches, and then put or, employees within the mayor's offices of the government of Guam. Okay? So that the governor will not be able to transfer employees out of the mayor's offices, basically. That's the end. Okay? Any objections to the amendment? No objections? Amendment carries.
Thank you.
Contracts exceeding funds restriction. Basically, this controls that no contract may be signed for goods or services or this. Yes.
I'm just an afterthought. Would that also include the mayor's council, because it's separate? Mayor's council of Guam
No, when I say mayor's offices, it wouldn't
would
include
be
that.
just the village, just the
Village office.
so the governor can transfer into the mayor's council of Guam, right? So
Oh.
maybe I'd like to go back and make that amendment to say the mayor's council of Guam and
The mayor's offices.
offices.
Okay,
If I can add to that.
Okay. There's a request by there's a motion, an amendment being proposed by Senator Barnes to include the mayor's council of Guam
Right.
to the restriction of transfers. No objections?
Thank you.
Amendment carries. Okay. Restrictions against contracts exceeding funds restriction. Again, this is an ongoing a provision from previous budgets, and basically it just says that goods, claims against goods or services and contracts may not be signed beyond their appropriation level. Restrictions on hiring of unclassified employees. These are, once again, from previous budgets in which hiring of unclassified employees are restricted with the exceptions of, and what you have here are the exceptions. So the teaching positions at UOG, GCC, nurses, doctors, licensed health professionals, and those other positions mentioned within the okay. The next section is the boards and commissions, meeting stipends. Compensation may be paid for those attending meetings. um, from the budgets of the departments and agencies.
Chairman,
Senator Palacios, the chair.
I just want to make sure this is actually a reinstatement of the suspension of the stipend
That's correct. The
that's
governor
been
had-
suspended for more than 12 years. I just want to understand.
That's correct.
Okay.
This is language we had last year, and so it allows the departments and agencies to pay it out of their budget
Okay.
for the
okay.
stipends. The governor wanted to just remove payment of the stipends,
I know, but
and this we're reinstating the ability to pay that.
so specifically now the parole board
Correct.
members can receive stipend with this provision.
Yes, with this provision.
With
they
this
can,
provision.
most
Thank you, Mr.
especially with
Chairman.
the
I
budget
just want
the
to
way it's-
be sure.
yes.
Thank you.
Section 16 is contracts. Positions in the classified and unclassified service shall not be filled pursuant to a contractual arrangement except again as those provided. This is the same as the restrictions in previous budgets that's been passed by this legislature. And it sets those that are allowed to be employed under contracts. Section 17 is the restrictions on wireless communications. Again, this allows certain officers within the government of Guam to have access to the cell phones, basically, and it restricts it to the governor, lieutenant governor, chief justice, presiding judge, etc., plus those that provide services through mental health and substance abuse for their programs, law enforcement officials. Again, this is existing language in the budget. Section 18 are the reporting requirements for employment placement, and job training programs at Guam Community College, the University of Guam, and the Department of Labor. Once again, these are existing language from previous budgets in terms of those, and there's been no change in that. Section 19, there are cost accounts within, if there's reporting requirements, they may do so manually, if they're not reports that can be generated through the AS400. So they're able to provide us manual reports and not just electronic reports. Section 20 is, again, incentive to conserve water for the departments and agencies, where they may keep the utility funds shall not be subject to transfer authority and may be carried over and authorized for the use by departments and agencies for the savings that they occur in the succeeding years.
Chairman,
Yes, Senator Palacios?
I just observed that autonomous agencies like the UOG, GCC, Mayor's Office are included here, and I want to ask, why is the judiciary not included under this section?
Because the judiciary gets its own allotment. It's a separate branch.
Okay.
So they should not have any problem because they're supposed to get their entire allotment released.
Okay,
So
thank you. I don't understand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
this is the executive branches. That's
Okay.
why. Yeah. Section 21 is the creation of the Section 2718 fund. In the last budget, this was enacted, and this codifies it as a special fund of the government of Guam instead of making it part of the general fund. So that's the right. And the additional provision in this section is that the government of Guam not only provides or enters into the MLR contract under the Obamacare, but we have a provision of contracts for what we call experience rating, experience participation provisions in our health contracts, and this requires that monies received through rebates from those implementation of those provisions will be deposited in the fund, and that the calculation for this is provided and requires that requires the calculation through that provision of the contract. So this is requiring that all both MLR and these rebates would be deposited in the fund and provides for the calculation methodology. Senator Cruz, did you have your hand up? No. Okay. Section 22, monthly income tax, refund efficiency payments, trust account bank statements. This just requires that we get a copy of bank statements for deposits made into the income tax refund accounts so that we will see what those deposits look like on a monthly basis. So I have Senator Cruz then. That concludes Chapter 12, and we'll go to Senator Cruz under miscellaneous provisions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. After reports, I have two amendments or proposed amendments that I've proffered. One is the annual tax credit reports, and the other one was the fees generated by Department of Public Health and Social Services. I'm not sure which one you'd like first.
Let's do the annual tax credit. Let's do the annual tax credit first.
The tax credits?
Right, did you want to?
Yes, if we could add a new section, I guess 23,
Okay.
that the Director of Administration shall submit an annual report by July 15th of each year detailing all transactional information and amounts of any tax credits, rebates, abatements, and offsets used from July 1st of the preceding year through June 30th of the following year to the Office of Finance and Budget, the Speaker, and Ilejes and Guahan, and the Magalahi.
On the amendment by Senator Cruz, any discussion? No objections? Amendment carries.
And then, Mr. Chairman, I had asked this question earlier about in the event that we should pass and approve the mental health proposed fee schedule, what we're going to do with that money, and I'm not sure if this complies with OFB's request. I just have, notwithstanding any provision of law, amounts collected from the implementation of fee schedule for the Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse shall be reimbursed to the government of Guam for the appropriations contained herein, and such funds shall be expended pursuant to appropriation and not subject to the transfer authority of Imagalahi. Is that sufficient, or would your committee like to make an amendment to that? I'm just trying to figure out at some point, in the event that it gets implemented during the next fiscal year, that this doesn't become a slush fund for the administration. I want it to make sure that it goes to paying down and the operation of mental health.
Okay, so basically the collections can only be expended subject to appropriation, right?
Right, but first it's supposed to go into the general fund.
Okay.
I mean, government Guam to reimburse it for the $17 million we appropriated for it this year. I'm not sure. Does your committee have a better language for that? I just... that's what it does say. Shall be used to reimburse the government of Guam for the appropriations. I have no objection to that amendment.
Okay. I'm just trying to follow it, Senator. Notwithstanding on provision.
Well, if the committee has a better wording for it, I just want to make sure we do something in here. And I know you instructed me to do an amendment, and this is what we came up with, but I have no pride of authorship and would be amenable to anything that at least makes it so that when and if we approve and when and if it is implemented, that somehow that money goes to reimbursing the government of Guam for the expenses incurred in the operation of mental health. Because we're not going to be able to collect this full 17
Right.
million, but it's even if their EIS is correct and it's anywhere from 9 to 12, that it still at least provides us additional money for any other things that this you may want to, this body may want to use to
Yeah. Just kind of looking at this, Speaker Cruz, Mr. Vice Speaker, my advice would be that we create a fund, a special fund to receive that, rather than just putting it into the general fund, because once it gets there and it doesn't get segregated, you know.
Okay, then can I save 24?
Yes.
And I'll go rewrite it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay. Senator Ada? Senator Gutherts, did Senator Gutherts, on the amendment you have passed out?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, colleagues. Mr. Chairman, I'm offering a amendment in the miscellaneous section of the budget bill that basically would extend the deadline for various businesses on the island to comply with the new product seal law that this legislature passed last year. The enforcement date for the new product seal law actually starts today. And various representatives of the business community, both in the retail and wholesale area, have asked for a little more time to prepare for the law. They are in the process of extinguishing current contracts they have with suppliers and packagers of their products. And they still have a little inventory left that they would like to extinguish. So I'm proposing, Mr. Chairman, that we give them a little more time. And the date of the new date proposed is March 17, 2013. Again, this simply extends the enforcement effectivity date for the new Guam product seal law. And I'm very happy to report, Mr. Chairman, and for the colleagues to know that the retailers on Guam are really cooperating, and they've actually given notices to some of the wholesalers to remove their products effective today from the retail area. So this would help them out so they can have a little more time to comply. And what I'm happy about is that we are seeing support and cooperation from the retail community and also the suppliers. They know they have to comply, and they are in the process of doing that.
Okay.
Thank you.
On the motion by Senator Gutherts, no objections? The amendment carries. Senator Ada, did you want to present yours on the solid waste?
Mr. Chairman, I have passed around an amendment. It's 2 pages. And what it does is it actually, first of all, it increases the projected revenues from the Solid Waste Operations Fund by an additional $300,000, and then debits that to go to the host community fund. Leaving then the amount of $19,939,600 for the Solid Waste Operations Fund. And so that amendment, I don't know, how do you want to do this? one amendment at a time, but does everybody have a copy of this amendment? Yes.
Yes.
And then I guess there's a second amendment there which creates in the same section 2, creates a new section, subsection AJ, which establishes the host community fund of $300,000. And then we have to go back and make technical changes to the figures as indicated here. But the important thing here is as we go down is that we actually then will add a new section 7 to chapter 7, Mayor's Council of Guam, which establishes clearly the host community premiums appropriation, appropriating the sum of $300,000 from the host community fund to the Municipal Planning Council funds of the villages of Ordot and Inarahan. So just a little bit of background. In the 30th legislature, a bill was introduced to provide what was called the host community premiums of the 2 villages that have been hosting the landfills, Ordot and Inarahan. And they were to be each given an additional $150,000, which was to be derived from the tipping fees. And so when the Solid Waste Authority collects the tipping fees, it will set aside $300,000 for this host community premiums, and $150,000 will go each to Ordot and $150,000 to Inarahan. A third amendment there, which adds a new section, I guess will be at 24 now, has to do with the management of the host community fund. And what it does is it still keeps the Department of Administration as the manager of the fund. So the Solid Waste Authority collects the $300,000 and DPW books it and then books it into to the books of the municipal planning councils of the 2 respective villages. But the biggest change here is that it really takes away the, it now deletes the requirement that Department of Administration shall retain 2% of all collections. 2% of this $150,000 for each village amounts to $3,000. At the village level, $3,000 is a lot of money. $3,000 at the government of Guam level of $500 million is nothing, but at the village level, it could be significant. So it's basically saying DOA continue to be the manager of the funds, but without that 2% stipend. And then, of course, we go on, and the law says no expenditure shall be made from the fund unless it is approved by resolution by that host community's municipal planning council. So that, Mr. Chairman, is my amendment that I would like to proffer, and this amendment is sponsored by myself and Speaker Judy Wampat.
Okay. All right. On the amendment by Senator Ada, as written and presented to the body for the implementation program of the host community for Inarahan and, of course, Ordot Chalampago. Any objections? No objections? Amendment carries.
Mr. Chairman, can I still make another amendment?
Yes, Senator Ada, you haven't. Which one's that, sir?
Oh, shucks. You know what? Can we move on to the next one? Oh, yeah. I still need to finalize the other ones. I'm ready, Mr. Chairman, with my next amendment.
Can you? Do we have copies of that, Senator Ada?
Yes, it has been. It is entitled Authorization for Legal Services for the Department of Public Works and the Appeals Board.
Okay.
Everybody should have a copy of that.
Yes. I
And
have a-
basically, what it says, what this amendment does is um, the Department of Public Works and the board, the appeals board, on their own cannot afford an attorney. But they do have a lot of work. Like in the case of DPW, they do a lot of procurement work, and they need to have those procurement measures reviewed by the AG's office. On the other hand, the appeals board, they're a watchdog for the professional community out there, and if they have to take adverse action against an engineer or whatever, usually it requires legal advice. But each alone cannot really justify one full-time attorney. So they have agreed to come together and basically enter into an MOU with the Attorney General's office to hire an attorney who's really there specifically to provide legal services to DPW and Appeals Board only. And the contributions for the services shall be in equitable proportions from their respective funds. So the sum of the contributions from DPW and Appeals Board will equal the salary of a assistant attorney general that comes, that's hired by the AG's office.
Okay. All right. The amendment has been passed out. Any objections to the amendment? No objections? The amendment carries.
I've got two more amendments to make, Mr. Chairman, but I noticed there's other amendments here, and I could come back to mine. I got to make copies of mine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Senator Palacios, did you have a...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I pass out already a proposed amendment to add to Chapter 12 on the miscellaneous. And basically, Mr. Chairman, this is a proposed amendment that actually is currently in Bill Form 347, which your committee, Mr. Chairman, heard on March 7, 2012, essentially to include the unified judiciary for certain position, unclassified position, to allow the Chief Justice, with the approval of the Judicial Council, to appoint unclassified position to key positions, specifically for the director, or rather the administrator of the courts, the deputy director, director of policy and planning, the clerk of the Supreme Court, clerk of the Superior Court, the marshal of the court, and the chief probation. I counted this is 7 key positions. Mr. Speaker, when Bill 347 was heard in March, there was some kind of a reservation expressed during that time, because actually the bill, and I have it before me here, that the amendment was actually comprised of only, I think, 10 words, and I can recite here that at that time, that bill is essentially said that unclassified employees of the judiciary of Guam appointed by the Chief Justice, period. And the concern here was that there was so wide a latitude of discretion to employ in that setting. And so the amendment here that I offer now define or set the parameters as to what positions, and that would satisfy some of the concern raised back then. And also there's more now checks and balance in that the Judicial Council has to approve. And this amendment parallels the amendment we made when we passed this new provision into law back in March, or rather early on last year, when the amendment was made on the floor to include heads of autonomous agency upon appointment by the governing body. And in this case, the governing body for the judiciary, Mr. Chairman, would be equivalent to the Judicial Council. And so I hope that my colleagues, and I pass out I recited, of course, the entire section to show that currently retired judges and chief justices are exempted from the suspension of annuity. And that's on paragraph 1. On paragraph 2, it's still in the law. For certified, registered, or licensed healthcare professionals, faculties of the UOG and GCC, and limited to employees of GPD. And the third paragraph is the new one that we passed early last year to allow the governor, the current administration, in fact, it was at their urging that this provision be included. And so the provision that rather the amendment that I offer to the body right now, I hope that we'll have the support, is just to include the judiciary, Mr. Chairman, to give them this tool so that the Chief Justice, again, with the approval of the Judicial Council, can have this tool, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the support of my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. On the amendment by Senator Palacios, any objections? No objections? Amendment carries. Senator Rodriguez, did you have an amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I have several amendments. I know I asked to bookmark when we were with DOC. Can I go back to that now?
Yes.
Or okay.
Yes.
Okay. The first amendment,
Or-
Mr.
Or no, let's, the
Stick to the
amendments that will be placed in the.
Miscellaneous. Okay.
Yeah, and then we're gonna go back to the bookmarks
Okay.
later.
Okay.
Correct, correct.
Thank you. The first amendment, Mr. Chair, deals with the Guam Fire Department. And we all know that sometime last year, Mr. Chair, that the fire department was supposed to start a fire recruitment cycle, and that about 30 recruits were selected, were given notices of their selection, but a few weeks later were then revoked. And I know now, and I commend the fire department for at least inserting in this budget request positions for 15 of those fire recruits. And so in order to really give justice to those individuals that had to, some of them, Mr. Speaker, had to resign from their current positions, their jobs, and were anticipating to be part of this fire recruitment cycle. And so this really put a big hardship on them. And some of them had actually expended their own funds to do the physical exams and other testing that was required. And so what we're trying to do here with this amendment is ensuring that the top 30 fire recruit members that were selected are intact, and that their selection is on top of the list when the 15 is started with this budget cycle.
Right, but it's confined to the appropriation to the fire department and not through the earlier appropriation from the E911.
That's right, and that's not part of this amendment. So that
Right,
is
so
something.
the E911 money remains for use
right.
with E911.
Yes.
Okay. Senator Muñoz Barnes?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to thank my colleague for authoring this amendment, but I just want to ask, based on including the top 30 applicants that were notified, it was noted that only the top 15 will be accepted. Is there I guess my inquiry would be, is there a rating system of who the top 15 versus the top 30? And how is that going to be rated? Because it's 15 positions for 30 recruits, and wasn't all 30 recruits accepted for employment on the round when they went through the training and the physical and the drug testing and all that? I'm
Yes,
just asking. I just want to make sure.
That's correct. There were 25 that were qualified and put on the list, basically. And so what this does, I think when he said 15, there's 15 vacancies.
Okay.
So they'll just go from the top of the
So-
list, keep working until they exhaust the 25, and then if there's not 15 out of the 25 that will be hired, then they'll start recruitment for a new cycle with
Okay,
new
so
ratings.
the top, so
30
meaning the
would
30.
continue But only 15 positions are available.
Right, but that top 25 that was accepted before, that were already accepted, will they be the first ones
Yes.
tapped into this?
Correct. That's what he said.
That's a given, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what he said.
Thank you. I just want to say that I do support the amendment.
Yeah. Okay. Senator Palacios, I saw your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of this amendment. And this has to do only, Mr. Chairman, with extending the life of the eligibility list. As you know, the eligibility list expires after 12 months. But this is the list that this government can do for these 30 officers that were actually made to believe that they already have a job, some of whom resign. Then at least let us extend that list and have their name remain available and the eligibility valid so that they get a first consideration for any position that would be filled, because I understand the quote-unquote cancellation of their hiring at that time is due to budgetary issues and the lapsing of the budget and those things. At any rate, this is just extending the life of the list, which is only fair, Mr. Chairman, and I rise in support of this.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Senator Tyrone?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just also want to rise in support of this, this amendment. The Guam Fire Department is in a position right now where they are looking at a mass deployment coming up at the beginning of 2013. So this gives us, this puts us a step ahead in the preparation. It allows us to fill the void in advance and have these people trained and in their respective positions. So this is good, and I'd like to commend the author of this amendment so that he could allow the Guam Fire Department to prepare for what lies ahead. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Monticello Tyrone. Any other comments? Any objections to the amendment? No objections? Amendment carries. Senator Rodriguez, did you have another one?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for that. The second amendment deals with the establishment of the Environmental Health Officer Position Series of the Division of Environmental Health, Department of Public Health and Social Services. Mr. Chair, back in the 30th Guam Legislature, the body passed and enacted in May of 2010 the Environmental Public Health Modernization and Revitalization Act of 2010. It was anticipated that this would be implemented by December 2010 to improve the operation of the Division of Environmental Health of Public Health, so to better protect the public's health from environmental hazards through the creation of a new position series with increased qualification standards and the application of competitive salary to promote the recruitment and retention of employees in these positions. And so because it was never implemented back in December 2010, Mr. Chair, we've introduced a measure recently, and it had a public hearing, the Vice Speaker's Committee, to establish in statute what these reclassifications are. And so the testimony that was received from Public Health was that this would, of course, help them in their carrying out of their duties and responsibilities at the department. And so this amendment lays out exactly what was incorporated in that bill and received the public hearing. So I'm asking my colleagues to please support this amendment.
On the amendment by Senator Palacios, did you have your hand up? Yes. On the amendment?
Just to say that I rise in support of this amendment, Mr. Speaker. I attended the public hearing on this one, and essentially the position that's actually proposed to be established here is actually a consolidation of 3 different positions right now, that the creation of one reflecting the duties of these 3 positions would allow, of course, the agency director to better utilize the incumbents of this position. And that's essentially what this would accomplish. But I rise in support of this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. On the amendment, no objection. Speaker Wampet?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe some of my questions can be answered. Is that I know when we're looking at page 3 where the changes are being made from specialist 1 to then now a health officer 1, and my understanding, of course, is that it's to be able to expand their their duties and responsibilities. Will this change in classification, will this in any way then somehow anywhere else in the government that may have those similar positions have a change in salary?
Senator Rodriguez, will you yield to that question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If the question was whether anywhere else in the government, if there's a similar position, I don't believe so. And so this is specific to Public Health Environmental Health Division.
Okay. Speaker Wampat?
Okay, so is there though will there be a change in salary, or are we just changing the title, but would there be a change in salary? Would this then actually trigger then now a change in salary much later, because I know there's going to be an expansion of their duties and responsibilities?
Senator Rodriguez, will you yield to that question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would. Yes, some of these would have a change in salary, and that's why in subsection C of the amendment, where we are identifying the utilization of the Environmental Health Fund and the sanitary and the Public Health Sanitary Inspection Revolving Fund to be able to sustain those changes in salary, and we've checked with them and with DOA as well, and so those funds would be adequate enough to sustain those.
Speaker Wampat?
Thank you. The last question, of course, on page 4 now, where it says that if the employee now is deemed unable to fulfill the requirements of or the minimum requirements or standards, then I know 1 and 2, if you're unable then to take on that position. So you're allowing in this case for these individuals to be transferred to another position in Guam in accordance to the rules and regulations. But the question now, of course, similar to what I had asked in the very first question, was any other positions in the government of Guam that have similar type titles or similar type duties, and if they're unable to meet the standards, then how will these individuals then be able to transfer to another position in the government of Guam, and or that do they continue to remain in their same position because they have not met the requirements to be able to be upgraded to that new position? And I'm just wondering what type of conflict would that present if there is one person in that division who maybe does not, I'm not saying it because I don't know, but how would that affect not only the morale and the working relationships of these individuals if they all just didn't move up, together?
Rodriguez, will you yield to that question?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm going to try to answer as best I could. In terms of that employee that is deemed unable to perform the duties of that reclassified position, I believe that if that person was to be transferred to another position within the rules, the established laws and rules and regulations, I would believe it would be to a position that person is currently in or similar to whatever functions that person is at the moment. And then the other question in terms of the morale of the employees of that division, I can certainly say that this amendment and this effort, this initiative is something that is supported by that division, the employees there, and really the reclassification of these positions is really something that's been long overdue. And so that's the best I could answer that question by the speaker.
Okay. Thank you very much. May I just call for a short recess? Senator Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in consultation with some of the members, I would agree to put this off for now, and then until some other questions are answered.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sidus Masi. On the request to withdraw the amendment, no objections. Author is allowed to withdraw his amendment. I have Senator Mana Silva Tyra. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to add a new subsection to Chapter 12, Miscellaneous Provisions. And this is entitled Anticipated Telecommunication Services Savings to Pay for Tax Refunds. It should read, the executive branch of the government of Guam anticipates a reduction in cost to its telecommunication services contract, which is scheduled to commence at the start of FY2013. At the awarding of the contract and the implementation of services, any and all savings realized shall be appropriated to pay for tax refunds. The Department of Administration shall provide a written report to the legislature detailing the actual amount of the telecommunications contract, the amount of any savings realized from said contract, and validation that said savings were allocated toward the payment of tax refunds. Mr. Chair, this subsection is the result of a call out by the governor following the release of his deficit reduction plan, when he asked the legislature to identify funds to back up some of our concerns that we've raised with regard to the deficit reduction plan. The administration has realized a savings that is associated with their unified telecommunications contract. It's a savings worth about $1.6 million. Recently, again, the governor did ask the legislature to come up with a solution, and I did address this issue with him, and he has assured that with this identification of funds, we will not have to seek the cuts that were identified with the Guam Fire Department firefighter pay. So it doesn't immediately address the issue of the firefighter pay, but what it does is it allows us to make a swap when it comes time to address the deficit reduction plan and remove that section from the governor's proposed bill. So I ask my colleagues to support me in this amendment, and I thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator Silva Tyron. Any questions or comment? If I could, Senator Ada, did you have?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the amendment that's being made. I just as a technical clarification, though, on line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it says that savings realized shall be appropriated to pay for tax refunds. I guess maybe the author would yield. Is it her intent that by this amendment it's saying that if there's any savings, it is hereby appropriated? So then if that's the intent, then it probably should read savings realized are hereby appropriated to pay for tax refunds.
That's fine.
Senator Montesilva?
That would be fine if that's his amendment.
Yes?
The intent is to pay down the deficit, and the deficit dealing with the tax refunds. So if we could immediately address these savings to pay
that.
tax refunds, so
Yes.
we could
Okay.
make that change.
So
to the
Senator
clause.
Haddad, you would amend that to, rather than shall be appropriated, it will be
Are-
savings realized are hereby
Are
appropriated.
hereby appropriated. So we are appropriating it now.
Right. On the amendment by Senator Haddad, no objections. Amendment carries. Senator Haddad, you may continue.
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. On the amendment as amended, Senator Silva Tyron, did you want to close on your amendment?
I would like to mention that this amendment was introduced by myself and Senator Chris Duenas
Okay. All right.
and Senator Tom Ada.
All right. Any objections to the Ann Guther's?
Could
I'm
I
gonna-
ask for
I'm-
1 second recess?
All right.
And
Yes.
we can come back to this real quick.
Okay. We're in here. We're in just a short recess.
we could put a date to identify which tax
Tax
refunds
refunds.
this would
So
go
it would
to.
be-
So it'd be 2012 and prior
And
years.
prior. At the end of the, that sentence are hereby appropriated to pay for tax refunds 2012 and
And
prior.
prior.
Okay. On that amendment, no objection? Amendment carries. On the amendment as amended, no objections? Amendment carries. Anybody else? That was it? Yeah, you've done it. Yeah. So we keep going now. But that goes back to the bookmark. Oh, okay. We're in a short recess here.
I just want to share with you, I do have a proposed amendment, and if we can go back to page 161, section 20.
Okay, section
And,
20 of
and
chapter
I
12.
know Rich
Okay.
the incentive to conserve energy and water consumption to the department and agencies, I wanted to know, I have an amendment, and it just says, inclusive of the University of Guam, the Guam Community College, and all mayoral offices, and if we can just insert "and facilities," because the mayors just don't run their offices, they also run facilities within their villages. So if I can beg the indulgence of my colleagues, if we can include "and
And
facilities"
facilities.
on that portion, and then also add "and facilities" on the second to the last,
Line 19.
right, line 19,
Okay, so on line 12, after mayoral.
page 161.
Line 12, after mayoral offices, add "and facilities." And then the same at line 19, after mayoral offices, right, "and facilities." No
Okay.
objections?
Thank you.
Amendment carries. Senator Ada had another amendment. I think he's just preparing it. We'll just take a short recess. Or Senator Yamashita.
Thank you very much, Speaker. But I just have a general question, and I think I know the answer, but I want it on the record. So the budget is like, for example, Department of Agriculture, the amount that is described, it's like a lump sum.
Correct.
The director shall be responsible for expending those monies.
Correct.
Right? And so all of that conversation about reorganization, even though it was transmitted to us a certain way, it doesn't mean that that's the way that money has to be spent.
Correct.
Correct, right?
Correct.
And so then as they proceed with their reorganization activity, I can just I can watch that whole process, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Senator Ada, did you?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment here. It's been passed around. You'll see the word there, Garvey, in you'll see it in line 6.
Okay.
Just to distinguish it from any other, I have another amendment that's of equal number of pages.
All right.
Has everybody identified that?
Okay. Proceed, Senator Ada.
Okay. Well, what this amendment does, Mr. Chairman, and we've had a public hearing on this, on a bill. It was actually Bill 485 that was introduced. And what this bill does is it authorizes the government of Guam to go out and issue a bond against the anticipated revenues to be received from the Federal Highway Administration. And the amount of the bonds will amount to $75,000. And this amount is based on a 10-year anticipated projection that's about, I believe, 40%, 40 or 60%. So it doesn't exhaust the total anticipated flow. This issuance is something that's really actually allowed under federal law. And so it just basically allows us to draw down on future revenue streams. But the benefit of this to the community is the fact that after next year, when the road projects that we have are completed, that's pretty much it for the highway construction activities on the island. And we want to keep at least that sector of the construction industry to remain active. And so by getting this bonds issued, we are then able to continue on with other projects. Those other projects are listed on page 6 of the amendment. And what it does is it groups the road construction projects that's identified in the 2030 Guam Transportation Plan into 2 groups. Group number 1 consists of 3 projects which have already been, the design is pretty much complete. And if this thing is, if the money comes in within, I believe, within 6 months, 6 to 12 months, the construction will actually be ready to begin. And so these bonds will then fund the construction of EPOW Road, the reconstruction and widening of EPOW Road. And that's from Route 1 over to the SDA, and then it'll fund Phase 2 from the SDA down to the Hilton intersection. It will then also fund the reconstruction of Route 27, otherwise known as Hamburger Road. That's the road that goes off of Route 1, just past, across from that new St. John swimming pool, out, and it'll come out by McDonald's. And then it will also then provide funds for Phase 1 of the Tizan Parkway. And that's the segment of the Tizan Parkway that begins from the existing GPD headquarters, and it'll move west along the fence line and will come out in the vicinity of where Cars Plus is. The bill is structured, or this amendment is structured such that if there's any excess funds from the Group 1 projects, or we find that we cannot move ahead on a project in that group, then we will take that money and apply it towards the Group 2 group of projects, which includes the reconstruction and widening of Airport Road, the resurfacing of Chalan San Antonio, Route 14, the rehabilitation and widening of Route 17, and then the reconstruction and widening of the Route 26, that's the Machechi Hill. So that's what the Garvey bond funds will be used to finance. And so unless my colleagues have any questions, that's basically what this amendment does, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator Ada. On the amendment, any objection to the amendment? No objections to the amendment? Amendment carries. Senator Ada?
I'm just getting, it's being passed around now, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this is being passed around now, and this is again, this is another bill. Originally, it was introduced as Bill 484, and it has had its public hearing. And what this bill does is it seeks to take advantage of the existing low interest rates. And so it wants to, GPA would like to then take advantage of these low interest rates and refinance the outstanding bonds that it has. Now, by refinancing the bonds at the lower interest rate, it will create basically GPA will be able to derive a benefit of about $8 million a year for, I believe, the next 9 years, 8 or 9 years. And so that's what the refinancing will do. The immediate benefit to the community of this refinancing is that now that it lowers GPA's annual debt service, in essence, it will be able to then go to PUC and ask them to reverse the rate increase that was granted to them in May just several months ago, which they had a rate increase. They were given a rate increase in May to allow GPA to generate an additional $9 million a year. So from this refinancing, it would, in essence, really, how would you say, nullify about 90% of that rate increase. And so we can now actually, the ratepayers will be able to be given some rate relief by foregoing that particular rate increase. And of course, we know that the price of oil is going up already. So if nothing else, you know, GPA has found a way to basically stave off that one rate increase, and we just have to deal with other rate increases as the price of oil goes up. So this, the provisions in this amendment has been reviewed by GPA, has been reviewed by bond counsel, and in fact, there's a provision in here that says that, you know, as soon as this thing is approved and they get the money, GPA has to go to PUC and request for a rate rollback, the rate rollback of the rates that were given in May of this year.
I was looking for that provision.
Okay, if you give me a minute, I will find it. Well, Mr. Chairman, the Vice Chairman of the Committee for Utilities found on page 2, on line 14, that's under findings and intent. It outlines there about the effect that this refinancing will do, and that it will provide effectively roll back the rate relief. I apologize, I cannot find, I thought I saw the language in here which required the GPA to go back to PUC and request for a rate rollback.
Okay, can we take a recess and we'll just add that at the end of the?
Sure.
Okay, just a short recess.
page 6 to that GPA refinancing amendment.
Okay.
And what the new page 6 does is it adds a new section which says bond proceeds may only be expended after filing of a rate reduction by GPA with PUC in the amount of the debt service savings realized by this refinancing. Now, I should clarify that there is a difference, there's a time lag between when GPA files for a rate reduction with the PUC and the time that the PUC actually makes its decision to roll back rates. That could be a time lag of as long as 6 months. But the way the amendment, this new language here is written, is that just the act of basically putting together the filing documents and filing it with GPUC, that will satisfy this requirement, and GPA can then begin expending the funds, which will be to pay off old debts. And yeah, there's a couple of old debts that needs to be paid off, and those are the expenditures that will have to be made. So, Mr. Chairman, I think then that this new page 6 addresses those concerns that you've raised.
Thank you very much. I have Senator Frank Blas, Jr.
I can see where he is, what the author would like to do with this, Mr. Chair, but I don't know whether it would be grammatically more sound if it says bond proceeds may be expended only after filing.
Okay. Senator, on the amendment?
Bond proceeds may be expended only after filing.
That's correct. That's what the that's what was request. That's what the chairman had requested.
Yeah, but you put bond proceeds may only be expended.
After filing.
Bond proceeds may be expended only, moving only from there to after.
Okay, so it's the repositioning of the word only.
Only.
So may be expended only after filing.
Okay. On the amendment by Senator Blas, no objections? The amendment passes. On the amendment as amended, no objections? Amendment passes.
Okay. Tony, did you have a question?
Next. Oh, she's leaving. Speaker Walker. We're still. Yes, chapter 12. Yes. No. Oh. Yes, Senator. Yes, ma'am. Yes. No, the whole amendment. Let me take the amendment presented by Speaker Wampat first, while I have the review by
Thank you very
speakers.
much, Mr. Chairman. I made a copy for you and the clerks, and primarily because what it is taking the existence rather of the current legislation of the Academy Charter School, and at the request of one of our colleagues, is that to have the Academy Charter actually report not just to the superintendent. They're going to report to the council itself, to the superintendent and the board in the existing law. And what I've done is that I've just amended it to include now that they actually send a report to the legislature and the governor. So that's the first amendment.
Okay. The amendment by Speaker Wampat is to add just the reporting of the Charter School Council so that their reports are also sent to Legislature in Guahan and
Imagalayan, Guahan.
It's a new section. Okay.
Yes.
On the amendment, no objection?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The second amendment also is at the request of the superintendent, because we are making the superintendent more involved now in the process. And and this is again just an amendment to the existing legislation, where originally the superintendent was not a voting member, and now he will be a voting member of the board. And the other amendment to that is that other than the other members will receive a stipend per meeting, the superintendent will not be compensated for his or her service as a member of the council. So those are the only two changes in the existing law.
Okay, so the second amendment being offered by Speaker Wampat is to basically add the superintendent to the voting membership of the Guam Academy Charter Schools.
Yes.
No objections? Amendment carries. Okay. Should we read this in the miscellaneous provision? Yeah. Yeah. No. Any other miscellaneous provision? Oh, no, but that's going back, right? On chapter 12? Vice Speaker Cruz, pretty soon I'll get to you. Vice Speaker Cruz, I recognize you. I'm getting closer, Senator Respicio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I have passed out an amendment creating the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services Fund, and I'm hoping that meets with
Yeah.
the committee's concerns.
Yes.
So that's my amendment,
Amendment.
and I hope that I can get some support for it.
The amendment has been passed out. It's the creation of the Mental Health Substance Abuse Services Fund. No, we're still in chapter 12. Yeah. Speak.
I think I had saved number 24. Remember when we were going
Yes,
through?
yeah.
So this will be the 24.
Yeah, this is 24. Yes, it's in chapter 12. This one. Okay. Okay. Any objections? No objections? Amendment carries. The other amendments, as we reviewed, are basically go back to the different sections of the bill, and we'll take. No, we're going to go into chapter 13 now, okay? And then we'll probably recess at the end of the day, and then we're going to inventory all the bookmarks and all the amendments we have that go back to the other sections, and begin with that tomorrow. So I'd like to proceed to chapter 13 now, okay? Yes, we'll finish with Senator Respicio's amendment. Thank you very much. Chapter 13 are the administrative provisions. Section 1, matching authorization for matching requirements, basically allows the funds appropriated in this act for matching requirements of federal grants. These are all the same as the provisions from previous budgets. Section 2 is the carryover of the local and federal matching, that because these bring additional revenues to Guam, they shall continue into the FY2013, and also because the grant year and the fiscal year may be different, so it allows us to carry that through. Section 3 is the retirement fund rate. This is a rate that's statutorily established, where the retirement fund at the end of every year calculates the retirement fund calculation needed for contribution rate to fund both the regular retirement and the unfunded liability. And the new rate this year is 30.09. Section 4, agency, autonomous agency revenue and expenditures reports to Magalahin Guahan and the legislature. Again, this is the same requirement as in previous budgets and the same reports, no additional reports. Section 5 is the revenue tracking. The BBMR director, in corroboration with Rev and Tax and Department of Administration, shall determine the collections of each fiscal year and revenue tracking balance of the fiscal year based upon actuals. And these will be posted on the websites and then filed with the legislature and the Office of Finance and Budget Director. Section 6 is prior year appropriations report. This requires the Department of Administration to give to the Legislature and Guahan a report on January 1st, 2013 of all open and continuing appropriations for all fiscal years prior to fiscal year 2012. The exemption from BBMR allotment release control, Senator Barnes and Senator Barnes. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to see if we can add on Section 7 on the exemptions after Unified Judiciary of Guam, as it was included in Fiscal 12's budget, is to add "and the Mayor's Council of Guam" from that BBMR allotment release control.
Okay.
It was included in fiscal year 12 and 11.
Okay. Just for the record, the exemption from BBMR allotment control, the change that we made from last year to this fiscal year was basically exclude the branches of government from the allotment control in BBMR. And that's why last year, the Mayor's Council is part of the executive branch. The Public Defender Service Corporation is part of the judiciary branch. And the Attorney General is part of the executive branch. So that was why the AG and the Mayor's Council were excluded. That was our approach to this exemption, is to keep the branches separate and independent. So, but we will entertain the amendment, of course. But that was the reason why that was changed. And yeah, and the governor's request also followed that only we just added the branches in terms of naming them. So that was what we did. So on the amendment by Senator Muñoz Barnes to include the Mayor's Council of Guam, no objection?
No objection.
Amendment carries. Senator Palacios.
Of course, Mr. Chairman, on the same section, I would like to restore the Office of the Attorney General. Again, the current budget has that, including the Mayor's Council. So that's my amendment, is to restore the Office of the Attorney General under the exemption.
Okay. On the amendment by Senator Palacios to add the Office of the Attorney General? No objections?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Amendment carries. The next section is the special fund transfer. Oh, I'm sorry. Senator Yamashita, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Speaker Ben. Speaker Ben, and I just heard you say why the language is as is before it was amended.
Right.
But is there any wisdom to including University of Guam in exempting them from BBMR allotment release?
Yeah. I think what the University of Guam has done is actually have worked with the administration and DOA, and they entered into an MOU on the allotment schedule release. So they basically work it out in the beginning of the year, and that process has worked for them. So we're letting that process continue.
So no. Okay.
Okay. All right. Special fund transfer, unless specified in this act, transfer to the general fund of any cash available from special fund. It just allows that, but it also requires that they be repaid, and that's the same language as the previous fiscal year. Facilities and insurance requirements, departments and agencies shall only expend such sums as necessary for departments and agency appropriations contained in this act for insurance of government-owned facilities built or repaired with FEMA grant funds where such insurance is required by FEMA. Reporting requirements for nonprofit organizations. These are the requirements and the report content that's required from all non-governmental organizations receiving general fund grants from pass-throughs to the departments and agencies. Fund reversions. Again, this is standard language in that unexpended and unencumbered appropriations from the general fund revert to the general fund. Tourist attraction revert to that. Healthy Futures, Territorial Education, and the Guam Highway Fund all revert to those funds. Restriction on the home use of government vehicles. Again, this restricts the taking home of government vehicles unless they are expressly permitted by statute. And basically, they're restricted to law enforcement and I believe first responders and such. Transfer authority. The transfer authority allowed is up to 5% between fiscal year 2013 appropriations. And that really is because this year it's a lump sum budget, so it's pretty much open-ended, so the transfer authority is not as critical because of the fact that it's a lump sum budget. I have Senator Blas requesting for a short recess.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, and I recognize that we're working collaboratively and diligently to be able to do this, and I'd like to be able to I'd like to allow the government a little bit more flexibility in being able to manage and as far as the transfer of the funds, and request the 5% be increased to 10%.
On the amendment to increase the 5% to 10%, no objections. Amendment carries. Section 14, email addresses, that they shall be posted with the respective agencies if they are paid for by the government of Guam. No objections. Section 15, combined purchase of textbooks. Again, this is purchase in bulk to assure if we could get any savings from having the agencies work together, the educational community. Same. Uniform allowances shall be no less than 150 for fiscal year 2013. Administration of deficit reduction. These are reports required, and these are the current reports that are being submitted at this time. They were part of the budget last year. Section 19 is the quarterly statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance report. The different revenue sources of the government of Guam shall be reported every quarter and itemized by the Department of Administration. Yeah, and last year that was monthly, and this year we're changing it to quarterly, so we're actually giving them a little bit of leeway here. Section 20 is the monthly cash balance reports for general and special funds, and this is the same requirement as in the previous year. Reporting requirements for boards and commissions. Again, this is the same reporting requirements that have been in effect for several budget cycles now. Section 22 is online electronic access to bank account information. This is a new section of the bill which basically provides the Office of Public Accountability and the Office of Finance and Budget access to read-only electronic access to bank accounts containing deposits by the government of Guam. So it actually puts everybody on the same page when talking about cash balances. All accounts, correct. Section 23, authorization for paying of prior year obligations. This allows the payment of prior year obligations using the current operation so that we don't hamper current operational needs, but has to be reviewed and certified by BBMR so that there's some control there. Section 24, the following departments are authorized to expend up to the level of revenues collected for their respective special revenue funds for fiscal year 13. Senator Palacios.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of inquiry. It says here that the following departments are authorized to expend up to the level of revenues collected. Does this mean then that the Guam Police Department, I don't know what was the latest figure on the police service funds, but does this mean that if there's more than what is committed here in this budget, that this is already an authorization of appropriation to expend beyond what, for example, what is noted here is $500-some thousand.
That's correct.
Suppose that finally, up during the fiscal year, it exceeded that. Does this mean that the amount in excess of that may be utilized by the Guam Police Department?
That's correct for what is authorized to be expended in the enabling legislation and the establishment of that fund.
Okay,
Yeah.
then.
Yeah. No, they're allowed to expend above the appropriation level.
That's what I want to
from the-
understand.
If collections exceed the appropriation level.
Okay.
For what is allowed to
For
be
what is
expended.
there.
So it's like the revolving funds?
Yes, that's what I want to.
Yes.
That's what I want to understand.
Right,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
okay. Speaker Wampat, and then Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You've listed here, of course, the Chamorro Land Trust Commission, and earlier, when we were going through their budget, you had indicated that you were budgeting up to for their operations, but there is a balance, and that
Right.
there were to be for Manu. I don't know where.
Chamorro Land Trust.
Yeah, so that's why I wanted to ask you, because that's not the case. So would it be appropriate at this time then is to delete the Chamorro Land Trust Commission F on line 14 and 15?
Yes. So on the motion to delete F, no objections, motion carries. Senator, okay. Any other comments? Section 25 is the Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if this is also the section where we could include the two funds that were established by law but not included in this Budget Act.
Yes, yes,
I
that
could-
would be appropriate.
Okay, so if I can move to place under, I don't see rev and tax here, but we'll go over to N on page 174.
Mhm.
Department of Public Health and Social Services, you have the Guam Environmental Health Fund. I'd like to add the Office of Vital Statistics Revolving Fund.
On that amendment, no objections?
And the second addition would be on M, Department of Revenue and Taxation. Right now you have the Tax Collection Enhancement Fund. And I'd like to add the Alcoholic Beverage Compliance Fee and Fines Fund.
On the amendment, no objection, amendment carries. Thank you. And cosmetology? But we don't know if that's active at this time. Yeah, we'll wait for the response. We can come back. Yeah, we'll bookmark that for possible addition for that additional. Yes, right. Section 25, 9+3 expenditure forecast. That no late. This is a new section from previous budgets. That the branches and agencies identified in the following subsections shall submit a written report to the Legislature and Guahan and the Office of Finance and Budget that contains 9 months of actual expenditures and 3 months of projected expenditures for fiscal year 2013. And again, this just gives the legislature some greater tracking in terms of expenditures and collections. And that will be the executive branch, the legislature, and the Unified Judiciary, the Attorney General, Public Defender, Mayor's Council, and the Office of Public Accountability. So that is the end of section, and then section 26 is severability. That's the end of chapter Yeah. And now I'm going to recognize Senator Respicio.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have this amendment here that reflects our earlier discussion. And do you have a copy of it?
Yes.
Yeah, so I moved, and it's just a new section is added, and it's blank to read as follows. Section, unless all outstanding general fund appropriations made to the judiciary of Guam are released and expended, the unexpended balances of appropriations from the general fund to the judiciary of Guam for prior years shall not revert to the general fund and shall be available until fully expended. And this approach recognizes the kind of fiscal discipline that you want to instill in this budget, as well as the Director of Administration's commitment to releasing all of their appropriations. But if in the event they don't, this is just like another added safeguard. And so I appreciate your consideration and coming back to me to move this amendment.
The amendment's out of order. No, just kidding. On the amendment, no objection. Amendment carries. I'm going to ask the Majority Leader to for a motion to recess until 9 o'clock tomorrow.
Yeah, so move, Mr. Speaker. I move that recess till 9 a.m.
And we'll go back to the bookmarks.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll
On
go
the-
back to wherever you want to go back to.
On the motion, no objections. We're hereby in recess.